how do we know that what we're doing is the right thing, and how can we plan for an effective use of our combat power and of our other partners' capabilities? Do we even know many times in the services who our partners are? I think we in this room probably have a better idea than most. But what are those partners? What are their capabilities? What are their limitations? And do they know ours? Metrics, I think, is very key. And in describing what right looks like, we can then describe what a plan should be involving all of our partners to obtain those end states. And so each of us knows what's expected of us. And also that we can help communicate that to our decision makers, our elected decision makers, that may not even thought about it before. Maybe that's a service we owe them as well. The interagency. We need to talk about interagency doctrine. That process has begun. That is significant in my mind because the elephants have decided that they need to talk together and start thinking together on how we're going to do these things. And they have started going down that path. Slowly, but they have started to go down that path. Maybe we might want to get an update from them on where they think this is going and where it's at, and how we can facilitate that success. The other piece might be the interagency planning process. That has also begun. We need to help interact and facilitate the interaction of our partners in interagency and the NGO community and the planning process. That means that we might have to modify our military planning process to accommodate that, and we should facilitate and lead that effort. We have to incorporate the strengths of our partners. One other thing that I think was a personal interest of mine was the introduction of the private sector. Private sector, in my mind, is the underpinning of all that we, I think, can accomplish or need to accomplish when we talk about a host nation and helping to either stabilize that. First we identify, are we stabilizing it, or are we transitioning it? Those two topics, one requires a lot more effort than the other. But engaging the private sector, one of the programs that I've been involved with the Institute for Defense and Business and Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Business Transformation is Economic and Governance Roundtables. And we need to invite them in. How are they educating, deploying units on these two significant lines of operation? The significance of the governance and the economics, and getting them engaged and discussing those and facilitating their success. Remember, we're not talking about just cultures in foreign countries. We're talking about cultures here within the Beltway and dealing with them and with the private sector. And then taking those cultures and taking them into a foreign culture, which is another interaction we have to facilitate. Maybe our role is to facilitate the roles and the interaction amongst all these cultures, facilitate their success. Thank you very much.
All right, I think we have time for 3 quick questions and quick answers, if there are any. Any questions? Sure.
Yes, Bob Crowley. With regard to the post-conflict reconstruction task list and the plethora of governmental organizations that have the capabilities, Michelle Forney, of course, in Beyond Goldwater Nichols, has argued that as a National Security Council, they need to have not just a quadrennial defense review, but a quadrennial national security review, and budgetary lines and tasking authorities to bring those capabilities together. I wonder if you could comment on that, or where you see that process going.
Those are issues that the Project for National Security Reform are addressing directly, trying to figure out how to arrange the space that's called the interagency space between the departments how you do that, you orchestrate it with Congress. It's a very difficult challenge. It's something that needs to be done. Basically, we have to rethink the 1947 National Security Act, which was established for a different environment from the one we're operating in today. And when you go into national security strategy, many of the players in what is today's national security don't see themselves doing that. They think they're just peacetime operations, and in fact, economics and human rights and other things all impact on national security these days. So it's a much broader problem. That's why we're having such a difficult time wrestling into the ground.
I have a question for Allison. Is peace operations are similar for SSTR? Whatever happened to peace op? We don't talk about peace op.
In the United States, we don't, but the rest of the world does. And actually, if you do, here comes the academic piece, okay? I want you to go and look at that question too. Do we call things stability ops? So I went and looked in our newspaper articles just in the United States. For a 20-year time period, I wanted to look at how many times stability operations showed up in the news reports. For 20 years, it was only 300 times. Then I tried to do peacekeeping operations. I could only go back 3 months, and there were over 3,000 hits. So in the United States, we might be referring it to SSTR, or SSTRO, or stability ops, or many of these different names. But most of the rest of the world is referring to it in another manner. Does it really matter? Getting the lexicon and having a common one, yes. But are the functions basically the same in both? Yes.
As I was looking at the list that Mr. Liddy put up, I noticed that if we look at like Ministry of Interior versus Department of Interior in the United States, it's very different from the United States to most countries. Or Department of Education at the national level in the United States versus the Department of Education at the national level in most countries. But it's much more similar if we look at states in the United States versus these departments in those countries. The Ministry of Interior in Iraq includes the police. A state has a department of, a state police, whereas at the national level we don't have a national police force the same way. I wonder if maybe